The dashboard camera captured everything the moment Judge Marcus Thompson's hands were slammed against the hood of his Mercedes, the racial slur that Officer Johnson spat as he tightened the handcuffs, the fabricated drug charges being radioed to dispatch. What Johnson didn't know was that every word, every violation of civil rights, every criminal act committed under color of law was being transmitted directly to an FBI surveillance van 3 miles away. This wasn't just any traffic stop. This was the moment a federal judge's undercover operation would bring down an entire corrupt police department. If you're watching from Detroit, Chicago, New York, or anywhere else in America, drop your city in the comments. Let me know how far this story of justice travels. Because what happened next didn't just change one man's life, it exposed a criminal conspiracy that reached the highest levels of law enforcement. The November rain hammered against the windshield of Judge Marcus Thompson's black Mercedes S-Class as he pulled into the rest stop off Interstate 94 just outside Detroit. His fingers drummed against the steering wheel, not from nervousness, but from the weight of what he carried. Beneath his tailored suit jacket, a state-of-the-art FBI recording device captured every sound, every conversation, every moment of this 6-month undercover operation that had already documented 37 incidents of civil rights violations by District 7 police officers. Marcus killed the engine and sat for a moment, watching the rain streak down the glass. His phone buzzed a text from Special Agent Rivera. "Surveillance team in position. Remember, we need them to initiate contact." He deleted the message immediately. After 23 years on the federal bench, Marcus had developed an instinct for danger that went beyond legal precedent. Tonight, that instinct screamed louder than the storm outside. The rest stop was nearly deserted, just 2 semi-trucks idling in the commercial vehicle section, and a District 7 police cruiser parked strategically where it could monitor both the entrance and exit. Marcus recognized the tactical positioning immediately. This wasn't a random patrol. They were hunting. As he stepped out into the rain, Marcus moved with deliberate calm toward the restroom facilities. His Italian leather shoes splashed through puddles that reflected the harsh sodium lights overhead. He'd made it halfway across the parking lot when he heard the distinctive chirp of a police siren just once, like a predator announcing its presence. "Sir, you there, stop where you are." Marcus turned slowly, keeping his hands visible. Officer Derek Johnson emerged from the cruiser, his hand already resting on his service weapon. Even in the rain, Marcus could see the officer's eyes, cold, calculating, scanning him like merchandise. "Good evening, officer," Marcus said, his voice carrying the measured tone he'd perfected over decades in the courtroom. "Is there a problem?" Johnson approached, his boots heavy on the wet asphalt. Behind him, his partner, Officer Kyle Mitchell, circled around to Marcus's blind spot, a tactical maneuver they'd clearly practiced. "License and registration," Johnson barked, despite the fact that Marcus was nowhere near his vehicle. "I'm just using the restroom facilities, officer. My car is—" "I said, license and registration." Johnson's voice cracked like a whip. "Don't make me ask again, boy." The word hung in the air between them, sharp and deliberate. Marcus felt the recording device against his ribs, its presence both a comfort and a reminder of the dangerous game he was playing. "Of course, officer." Marcus reached slowly for his wallet, noting how Mitchell's hand twitched toward his taser. "May I ask what this is regarding?" "You match the description of a suspect we're looking for." Johnson said, the lie rolling off his tongue with practiced ease. "Drug dealer drives a fancy car, thinks he's better than everyone else." Marcus handed over his driver's license, the one the FBI had specially prepared that listed him as Marcus Thompson Management Consultant, with no indication of his federal judgeship. Johnson snatched it, studied it under his flashlight, then tossed it to Mitchell. "Run this," Johnson ordered. Then turning back to Marcus, "You seem nervous. You carrying anything I should know about?" "No, officer. I'm not nervous, just confused about—" "Stop lying to me!" Johnson exploded, stepping so close that Marcus could smell the stale coffee on his breath. "I've been doing this for 15 years. I know when someone's dirty. You people think you can drive through our district in your stolen cars, selling your poison to our kids." The accusation was so absurd that Marcus almost broke character. A federal judge accused of drug dealing based on nothing more than the color of his skin and the car he drove. But this was exactly what Agent Rivera had warned him about. District 7's modus operandi was to provoke a reaction, any reaction that could justify an escalation. "Officer, I can assure you that this car is legally purchased and registered in my name. I have no involvement in any illegal—" "Hands on the vehicle now." Marcus moved toward his Mercedes, but Johnson grabbed his shoulder, spinning him around and slamming him against the hood with enough force to knock the wind from his lungs. The cold metal against his cheek mixed with the rain as Johnson kicked his legs apart. "Well, well, well," Mitchell called out, jogging back from the cruiser. "Mr. Thompson here has quite the record." Marcus knew this was impossible. His record was spotless, had been for 53 years. But he understood the game now. They were manufacturing probable cause in real time. 3 outstanding warrants. Mitchell continued reading from absolutely nothing on his screen. Possession with intent, failure to appear, and oh, this is interesting, suspected gang affiliation. "That's not possible," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the pressure of Johnson's knee in his back. "Check again. There must be some mistake." Johnson's laugh was ugly and sharp. "The only mistake was you coming through our district, homie. See, we keep things clean here. No thugs, no drugs, no problems. And definitely no uppity—" He caught himself before the slur fully formed, but the intention hung there like smoke. Johnson's pat-down was deliberately invasive, his hands lingering, squeezing, humiliating. When he reached Marcus's jacket, his fingers found the unusual thickness where the wire was concealed. "What's this?" Johnson's voice took on a predatory excitement. "You wearing a vest? You expecting trouble?" For a moment, Marcus's heart stopped. If they discovered the wire now, 6 months of investigation would evaporate. Worse, he'd be exposed vulnerable with 2 corrupt cops in a deserted rest stop. But Johnson's arrogance was his weakness. He assumed the thickness was a money belt or concealed weapon, something that would justify an arrest. His hands moved on, missing the wire entirely. "Stand up," Johnson ordered, yanking Marcus upright. Rain ran down Marcus's face as he stood there, hands on the hood, while Johnson circled him like a shark. "Here's what's going to happen," Johnson said. "You're going to consent to a search of your vehicle. We're going to find what we know is in there, and you're going to prison where you belong." "I don't consent to any search," Marcus said, clearly knowing the wire would capture every word. "I've done nothing wrong, and you have no probable cause." Mitchell laughed. "Probable cause. Did you hear that, Derek? He thinks he's a lawyer now." "Actually," Johnson said, producing a small plastic bag from his pocket, "I think I smell marijuana coming from your vehicle. That's all the probable cause we need." Marcus watched in horrified fascination as Johnson walked toward the Mercedes, the planted evidence visible in his hand. This was it, the moment the FBI had been waiting for. Not just false arrest or harassment, but active criminal conspiracy. "Officer Johnson," Marcus called out, his voice carrying across the parking lot. "I want to be very clear. I do not consent to any search. I have not committed any crime, and I am requesting that you contact your supervisor immediately." Johnson turned back, his face twisted with rage. "You don't make requests here. You don't make demands. You don't do anything but what I tell you to do." The sound of another vehicle approaching made both officers tense. A family minivan, Illinois plates, pulled into the rest stop. A black family, mother-father. 2 young children visible through the windows. The father started to get out, saw the scene, and hesitated. "Move along," Mitchell shouted at the family. "Police business." The father looked at Marcus, sprawled against the hood of the Mercedes, and something passed between them, a recognition of shared experience, shared injustice. He pulled out his phone. "I said move along." Mitchell started toward the van, hand on his weapon. "We're just using the restroom," the mother called out, her voice trembling. "The children, use the next one. This rest stop is closed." But the father was already recording, his phone held high despite his shaking hands. "This is a public rest stop. We have every right to." Johnson abandoned Marcus and stormed toward the family. "You want to join your friend here? Want your kids to see their daddy in handcuffs?" The threat against children, the crossing of yet another line, made something shift in the air. The mother was recording now too, and Marcus could see the red light blinking on both phones. "Officer," Marcus called out, trying to defuse the situation. "These people aren't involved. Please let them." "Shut up." Johnson whirled back to him. "Mitchell, cuff him. He's under arrest for possession with intent to distribute, resisting arrest, and obstruction of justice." As the cold metal closed around Marcus's wrists, the same wrists that had signed hundreds of judicial orders, that had sworn in countless attorneys, that had upheld the Constitution for over 2 decades, he felt the weight of the moment. Not just his own humiliation, but the countless others who had stood in this position without the protection of a wire, without the FBI listening, without hope of justice. "You're making a mistake," Marcus said quietly as Mitchell tightened the cuffs until they bit into his skin. "The only mistake," Johnson hissed in his ear, "is you thinking you're equal to us. You people never learn your place." The family in the minivan hadn't moved. The father continued recording as Johnson and Mitchell roughly searched Marcus, pulling out his wallet, his phone, his keys, tossing each item on the wet ground with deliberate disrespect. "Look at this," Mitchell said, holding up Marcus's wallet. $1,500 in cash, drug money for sure. "That's my personal." Johnson's fist connected with Marcus's kidney, dropping him to his knees. The pain exploded through his body, but worse was the humiliation, a federal judge kneeling in a puddle while racist cops stood over him fabricating crimes. "He attempted to assault me," Johnson announced loudly, performing for the family's cameras. "You all saw him make aggressive movements toward Officer Mitchell." The lie was so bold, so confident, that Marcus understood how many times it must have worked before. How many people had stood here, or somewhere like here, with no witnesses, no recording, no recourse. "That's not what happened," the father called out from the minivan. "We saw everything." "He didn't." "Sir, I'm going to need you to delete that video and leave immediately," Mitchell said, walking toward the van with purpose. "This is an active crime scene." "We're not deleting anything," the mother said, her voice stronger now. "This is evidence of police brutality." The word evidence made Johnson's head snap up. He looked at the family, at their phones, at Marcus still kneeling in the puddle, and for the first time, uncertainty flickered in his eyes. "Get their phones," he ordered Mitchell. "They're interfering with an investigation." "You can't take our phones," the father protested. "We know our rights." "Your rights." Johnson laughed, but it sounded forced now. "You're about to learn about your rights. Mitchell, arrest them both for obstruction." The children in the minivan began crying as Mitchell approached. The mother's hands shook as she continued recording, backing away from the advancing officer. "Please," she said. "Our children, we didn't do anything wrong. We're just recording." "Recording a police operation is a federal crime," Johnson lied smoothly. "Patriot Act Section 7. Marcus knew there was no such section, no such law. The depth of corruption, the casual evil of it, made his stomach turn. But every word was being captured, transmitted, recorded for posterity. A semi-truck's air horn blasted suddenly, making everyone jump. The truck had pulled up behind the police cruiser, and the driver, a massive white man in overalls and a Vietnam veteran cap, climbed down from his cab. "Problem here, officers," the trucker called out, his phone also raised and recording. "Get back in your vehicle," Mitchell shouted, now surrounded by witnesses. "Public rest stop," the trucker said calmly. "I got every right to be here. And from where I'm standing, looks like you're harassing this man and threatening that family for no good reason." Johnson's face had turned an ugly shade of red. The situation was spiraling out of his control. Too many witnesses, too many cameras. He yanked Marcus to his feet. "We're taking him in," he announced. "Anyone who follows us or continues recording will be arrested for interference." As they dragged Marcus toward the police cruiser, He heard the trucker call out, "What's your badge number? What precinct are you from?" Johnson ignored him, shoving Marcus into the back of the cruiser with unnecessary force. Marcus's head struck the doorframe, another deliberate act of violence that would appear accidental on any official report. Through the rain-streaked window, Marcus saw the family and the trucker still recording. The mother had her phone pressed against the minivan's window, tears streaming down her face as she captured every moment. The father stood protectively in front of the van, his own phone steady despite his obvious fear. "This is going viral," Mitchell muttered to Johnson as they got in the front seats. "Those videos—" "Shut up," Johnson snapped. "We control the narrative. Always have, always will." As the cruiser pulled out of the rest stop, Marcus caught a glimpse of the FBI surveillance van, parked behind the tree line, invisible to everyone but him. Agent Rivera and her team had captured everything, not just the false arrest and assault, but the threat to innocent bystanders, the conspiracy to destroy evidence, the admission of systemic corruption. "You comfortable back there?" Johnson asked, mockingly, adjusting his rearview mirror to look at Marcus. "Get used to it. Where you're going, comfort's going to be a distant memory." Marcus remained silent, feeling the wire still recording against his ribs. Every mile they drove was another federal crime kidnapping under color of law. Every lie they told dispatch over the radio was another conspiracy charge. They thought they were taking him to jail. In reality, they were driving themselves to federal prison. The rain intensified as they merged onto the interstate, heading toward District 7 precinct. Marcus closed his eyes, not in defeat, but in preparation. The hard part wasn't over. It was just beginning. At the precinct, he would face more officers, more corruption, more danger. But he would also reveal his true identity at exactly the right moment, when the damage to their criminal enterprise would be maximum and irreversible. "Hey, Johnson," Mitchell said, scrolling through his phone as he drove. "You need to see this." "What now?" "That family's video. It's already got 3,000 views. The title says, 'Racist Cops Plant Evidence on Black Man at Rest Stop.'" Johnson's knuckles went white on the steering wheel. "Doesn't matter. Once we book him and find the drugs in his car—" "What if there are no drugs?" Mitchell interrupted, a note of worry creeping into his voice. "What if we're wrong about this guy?" "We're never wrong," Johnson said flatly. "And if we are, we make ourselves right. That's how this works. That's how it's always worked." Marcus listened to them discuss fabricating evidence as casually as discussing the weather. Each word was another nail in their coffins, another piece of evidence that would be played in federal court. The FBI had given him a simple mission: let them commit their crimes, document everything, survive. 2 out of 3 wasn't bad, Marcus thought, feeling the bruise spreading across his kidney where Johnson had struck him. Survival was still an open question. The cruiser's radio crackled to life. "Unit 47, what's your status on that 1095? "Suspect in custody," Johnson responded. "Marcus Thompson, multiple warrants, possession with intent. Transporting to District 7 for processing." "Copy that. Sergeant Williams wants to see you when you get in." Johnson and Mitchell exchanged a look that Marcus couldn't quite read. Sergeant Williams, was he part of the conspiracy or an obstacle to it? "Think Williams knows about the warrants?" Mitchell asked quietly. "Williams doesn't know anything I don't tell him to know," Johnson replied, but there was something in his voice, a hint of uncertainty that hadn't been there before. They drove in silence for several minutes. The only sounds, the rain on the roof and the occasional squawk of the radio. Marcus tested the cuffs too tight, cutting off circulation to his fingers. Another violation, another charge to add to the growing list. "You know what your problem is," Johnson said, suddenly catching Marcus's eyes in the mirror. "You people think that money makes you equal. That driving a nice car, wearing nice clothes, talking all proper, that it changes what you are. But it doesn't. You can put a suit on a monkey, it's still a monkey." The dehumanization was so casual, so complete, that Marcus felt a cold rage building in his chest. Not hot anger he'd learned to control that decades ago. This was the cold fury that had driven him to accept the FBI's dangerous proposition to risk his career and possibly his life to expose this cancer. "Nothing to say," Johnson taunted. "Where's all that 'I know my rights' talk now?" Marcus remained silent, letting Johnson's words hang in the air, letting them sink into the wire's memory. Every slur, every confession of bias was evidence of the federal hate crime charges that would be added to the indictment. The phone in the center console buzzed. Mitchell picked it up, his face going pale as he read. "Derek, the video has 50,000 views now. The comments. People are identifying us. They found our Facebook profiles, our—" "Turn that off," Johnson ordered. "We deal with reality, not social media. Reality is, we have a drug dealer in custody and we're going to find his stash." But Marcus could hear the edge in Johnson's voice, now the first crack in his confidence. The world had changed since Johnson started his career 15 years ago. Camera phones and social media had shifted the balance of power in ways that officers like Johnson were only beginning to understand. The District 7 precinct loomed ahead, a fortress of concrete and glass that had stood for 40 years as a symbol of law and order. But Marcus knew the truth. It was a criminal enterprise masquerading as law enforcement, a place where civil rights went to die. As they pulled into the secure garage, Marcus saw something that made his pulse quicken. 3 unmarked federal vehicles parked in visitor spaces barely visible from the garage entrance. The FBI wasn't just listening anymore. They were here ready to move when the moment was right. "Home sweet home," Johnson announced as the garage door closed behind them. "Time to process you into your new life as a convicted felon." Mitchell came around to pull Marcus from the vehicle, dragging him out roughly, despite Marcus offering no resistance. The garage was empty, except for them. No witnesses here, no cameras, except the security system that Johnson probably knew how to edit. "Before we go inside," Johnson said, stepping close to Marcus, "I want you to understand something. Those people with their phones, they don't matter. Their videos don't matter. Because by the time we're done with you, you'll be just another drug dealer who got caught. Your word against ours, and guess whose word counts in court?" Marcus finally spoke, his voice calm and measured. "The truth has a way of surfacing, Officer Johnson, no matter how deep you try to bury it." Johnson's fist connected with Marcus's stomach, doubling him over. The pain exploded through his core, but Marcus had endured worse. He'd endured a lifetime of men like Johnson, and soon, very soon, Johnson would understand what that really meant. The truth. Johnson laughed as he dragged Marcus toward the entrance. "Is whatever we say it is." The fluorescent lights of the booking area were harsh after the darkness of the garage. Several officers looked up as Johnson and Mitchell brought Marcus in, some with curiosity, others with a knowing indifference that spoke of routine. "What do we have here?" the booking sergeant asked an older black woman named Patricia Hayes, who Marcus recognized from his investigation files. She was one of the few clean cops in District 7, which explained the tension that immediately filled the room when she saw Marcus's condition. "Drug dealer," Johnson said quickly. "Resisted arrest, had to use necessary force." Sergeant Hayes looked at Marcus, his expensive suit soaked with rain and dirt. His face composed, despite the obvious pain, the too tight cuffs cutting into his wrists. Her eyes narrowed. "Run his prints," she ordered the booking officer. "I want to see his actual record, not what you think his record is." "Already ran him in the field," Mitchell said nervously. "3 warrants." "I said run his prints." Hayes repeated, her voice carrying an authority that made Mitchell step back. As the booking officer approached with the fingerprint scanner, Marcus made a decision. The moment was coming faster than planned, but perhaps that was for the best. He looked directly at Sergeant Hayes and said clearly, "Before you run those prints, Sergeant Hayes, you should know that this arrest is being monitored by federal authorities." The room went still. Johnson's face drained of color. "What did you just say?" he whispered. Marcus straightened, despite the cuffs, despite the pain in his stomach and kidney, and when he spoke again, his voice carried the full authority of his true position. "I am Federal Judge Marcus Thompson of the Eastern District of Michigan. I have been operating under the supervision of the FBI for the past 6 months, investigating civil rights violations in this precinct. Every word, every action taken tonight has been recorded and transmitted to federal agents. And Officer Johnson, that plastic bag of evidence you planted, federal agents watched you do it." The fingerprint scanner clattered to the floor as the booking officer stepped back in shock. Sergeant Hayes stood slowly, her hand moving instinctively to her radio. "You're lying," Johnson said, but his voice cracked. "You're just trying to call the FBI field office," Marcus said calmly. "Ask for Special Agent Rivera. Tell her Judge Thompson's cover has been broken at District 7. She's been waiting for that call." Mitchell ran. He made it 3 steps before Sergeant Hayes's voice cracked like a whip. "Officer Mitchell, if you take another step, I will arrest you myself." Mitchell froze, caught between his partner and his sergeant, between his crimes and his conscience. Johnson's hand moved toward his weapon. "This is a setup. This is—" "Officer Johnson, remove your hand from your weapon immediately," Sergeant Hayes commanded. She picked up the desk phone, her eyes never leaving Johnson. "This is Sergeant Hayes at District 7. I need immediate backup and booking, and connect me to the FBI field office, now." The next 90 seconds unfolded like a nightmare for Johnson and Mitchell. Sergeant Hayes confirmed Marcus's identity with one phone call. The color that drained from her face as she realized a federal judge was standing in her booking area, injured and in handcuffs, told everyone what they needed to know. "Uncuff him immediately," she ordered Johnson. "This is impossible," Johnson muttered, fumbling with his keys. "You can't be a judge. You can't." As the cuffs fell away, Marcus rubbed his wrists, feeling the blood flow return to his fingers. He reached inside his jacket and carefully removed the wire, setting it on the booking desk. 6 months of evidence," he said quietly. 37 documented incidents of civil rights violations. False arrests, planted evidence, excessive force conspiracy to deprive citizens of their constitutional rights. And tonight, Officers Johnson and Mitchell, you provided the FBI with everything they need to bring federal charges not just against you, but against everyone in this precinct who participated in or knew about these crimes. The sound of sirens filled the air, multiple vehicles approaching fast. Not regular police sirens, but the distinctive sound of federal vehicles. The FBI wasn't coming. They were already here, had been here waiting for this moment. Johnson's legs gave out. He collapsed into a chair, his face gray, his hands shaking. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know you were—" "It wouldn't have mattered if I was a judge or a janitor," Marcus said. "What you did tonight, what you've been doing for years, is a violation of everything that badge represents. The only difference is that tonight someone was listening." The doors burst open. Federal agents flooded the booking area, weapons drawn, badges, visible authority absolute. Special Agent Rivera entered last, her face a mask of professional satisfaction. "Judge Thompson," she said formally. "Are you injured?" "I'll survive," Marcus replied. "Did you get everything?" "Every word, Your Honor, every crime." She turned to Johnson and Mitchell. "Officers Derek Johnson and Kyle Mitchell, you're under arrest for violations of Title 18, Section 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. You have the right to remain silent." As Rivera read them, their rights, their real rights. Not the perverted version Johnson had been using. Marcus watched the precinct transform around him. Officers who had ignored corruption for years suddenly found their consciences. Those who had participated scrambled for exits that were already blocked by federal agents. "This goes all the way up," Johnson said desperately, as they cuffed him with his own handcuffs. "The chief, the mayor, everyone knew. I was just following—" "Then you'll have plenty to discuss with federal prosecutors," Rivera said. "Right now, your only concern should be whether you want to cooperate or spend the next 20 years in federal prison." As they led Johnson and Mitchell away, Sergeant Hayes approached Marcus. There were tears in her eyes. Anger, shame, relief, all mixed together. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I knew something was wrong in this precinct, but I didn't know how deep it went. I should have done more." "You did what you could within a corrupt system," Marcus replied. "But now that system is being dismantled. The question is, Sergeant Hayes, will you help rebuild something better?" Before she could answer, Marcus's phone, which had been returned to him, exploded with notifications. The video from the rest stop had gone viral. 300,000 views and climbing. The family from the minivan had tagged every news outlet, every civil rights organization, every activist with a platform. The headlines were already forming. Federal judge arrested by racist cops, FBI investigation explodes. Undercover judge exposes police corruption ring. The rest stop recording that changed everything. But Marcus wasn't thinking about headlines or the press conference that would surely come. He was thinking about the family in the minivan, about the trucker who had stood up when it mattered, about all the people who had faced Johnson and Mitchell, and officers like them, without the protection of a federal badge or an FBI wire. "Agent Rivera," Marcus said, his voice carrying across the chaos of the booking area. "I want to review every arrest these officers made in the last 5 years. Every person they put in prison based on planted evidence or false testimony needs to be freed. Every family they destroyed needs to be made whole." Rivera nodded. "The Department of Justice is already preparing to review every case. This is bigger than just Johnson and Mitchell, Your Honor. This is going to reshape policing in Michigan." As Marcus walked out of the District 7 precinct, past the federal agents cataloging evidence, past the officers being read their rights, past the weight of decades of injustice finally being addressed, he thought about what Sergeant Hayes had asked. Could they rebuild something better? The answer would come in time, in legislation and training and accountability. But tonight, in this moment, as he stood in the rain outside a precinct that would never again be a fortress of corruption, Marcus Thompson knew that change, real change, had finally begun. The wire had done its job. The FBI had their evidence. Johnson and Mitchell would face justice. But the real victory was simpler and more profound tonight. The truth had surfaced, just as Marcus had promised it would. And no amount of badges or authority or systemic corruption could push it back down again. The revolution hadn't been televised. It had been live-streamed, uploaded, shared, and viewed by millions. And it had started with a federal judge willing to endure humiliation and pain to expose what everyone knew, but no one could prove, that sometimes the greatest criminals are the ones wearing badges. As the rain washed away the blood from his wrists, where the cuffs had cut too deep, Marcus thought about his next move. The investigation was far from over. District 7 was just the beginning. There were 6 more districts in Detroit, dozens more across Michigan, hundreds across the nation, where officers like Johnson operated with impunity. But tonight had proven something crucial. They were not untouchable. They were not above the law. And with enough courage, enough determination, and enough people willing to hold up their phones and say, "This is wrong," the system could be changed. Marcus got into the waiting federal vehicle, Agent Rivera at the wheel. As they drove away from District 7, he pulled out his phone and watched the video one more time. The family had captured it all: his dignity, in the face of humiliation, his calm assertion of rights, Johnson's rage and violence. But what struck Marcus most was the comment section. Thousands of people sharing their own stories, their own experiences with officers like Johnson. Each comment was a testimony, a piece of evidence in the larger case against systemic injustice. "Where to now?" "Your Honor," Rivera asked. Marcus looked at the precinct disappearing in the rearview mirror, then at the wire sitting on the dashboard, silent. Now its job complete. "District 3, he said. "The investigation continues." Rivera smiled grimly. "They won't see you coming." "No," Marcus agreed, thinking of Johnson's shocked face when the truth was revealed. "They never do." The federal vehicle hadn't even left the District 7 parking lot when Agent Rivera's phone erupted with urgent notifications. She pulled over immediately, her face draining of color as she read the screen. "Your Honor, we have a problem," she said, turning to Marcus. "The video from the rest stop, it's not just viral. Someone leaked your name, your real name. They know you're a federal judge." Marcus felt his blood run cold. The investigation had protocols, careful steps designed to protect everyone involved. This leak could destroy everything, not just the cases they were building, but lives. "Who leaked it?" Marcus asked, though he already suspected the answer. "We're tracking the source, but it came from inside District 7. Someone with access to the booking system ran your prints before we could lock it down." Rivera was already on her radio, coordinating with other units. "We need to get you to a safe house, now." The car lurched forward, Rivera driving with the controlled urgency of someone trained in protection details. Marcus watched the city blur past his mind, racing through the implications. If his identity was public, every corrupt officer in the state would know he was coming for them. Worse, they'd have time to destroy evidence, intimidate witnesses, close ranks. His phone buzzed, a text from his wife Sharon. "Marcus, there are reporters at our house. What's happening? Are you safe?" Before he could respond, Rivera's radio crackled to life. "All units, we have a situation at the Thompson residence. Multiple vehicles converging. Possible retaliation scenario." "Sharon." Marcus breathed, his judicial composure finally cracking. "My wife is at home." Rivera was already spinning the wheel tires, screaming as she executed a perfect J-turn. "Unit 12 is 30 seconds out. They'll secure your family." She handed him her phone. "Call her. Keep her on the line." Marcus's fingers trembled as he dialed. 1 ring, 2, 3. "Marcus?" Sharon's voice was tight with fear. "There are cars outside, not reporters. They're—" The sound of breaking glass cut through the phone. Sharon screamed. "Get to the safe room," Marcus shouted, his voice breaking. "Now, the code is your mother's birthday." Rivera floored the accelerator, the speedometer climbing past 90 on city streets. Other federal vehicles appeared from side streets, forming a convoy racing toward Marcus's home in Grosse Pointe. "They're in the house." Sharon's voice came through the phone, muffled now. She was in the reinforced panic room Marcus had insisted on installing when he first took the bench. "Marcus, I can hear them destroying everything. They're shouting about teaching you a lesson about knowing your place." "Federal agents are seconds away," Marcus said, forcing calm into his voice, even as his heart hammered. "Stay in the safe room. Do not come out until you hear Agent Chen's voice. He'll use the code word Constitution." Through the phone he heard the distant sound of sirens, then shouting, then the distinctive crack of flashbang grenades. Federal agents were breaching his own home to save his wife from corrupt cops seeking revenge. Shots fired at the Thompson residence." The radio erupted. "Officer down. We need medical now." Marcus couldn't breathe. Officer down, federal or corrupt. And Sharon, was she safe? The panic room was bulletproof. But if they had brought heavy weapons... "Sharon!" He called into the phone. "Sharon, are you there?" Static. Then faintly her voice. "I'm okay. I can hear Agent Chen. He's calling the code word. Marcus, what have you gotten us into?" The relief was so intense, Marcus nearly collapsed. But Rivera was pulling up to his house now, and what he saw made his stomach turn. 3 District 7 police vehicles' windows shattered, officers face down on his lawn, being cuffed by federal agents. His front door hung off its hinges. Every window on the ground floor was broken. But worse was what he saw spray-painted across his garage door in red letters. "Race Traitor Judge. You're next." Agent Chen emerged from the house, escorting Sharon, who looked shaken but unharmed. She ran to Marcus, collapsing into his arms, her whole body shaking. "They said they were going to burn the house down with me in it," she whispered. "They said you needed to learn what happens to people who don't know their place." "Who?" Rivera demanded, her professionalism replaced by cold fury. "Which officers?" Chen consulted his tablet. Officers Raymond Torres and James Fitzgerald from District 7. They were off duty, but they used their police radios to coordinate. We have everything recorded. Marcus held his wife tighter, feeling her tears soak through his shirt. In 23 years on the bench, he had never felt the system's violence so personally. These weren't just corrupt cops, they were terrorists, with badges willing to attack a federal judge's family to protect their criminal enterprise. Judge Thompson, Rivera said quietly, this changes everything. This is no longer just corruption, it's organized crime. The Attorney General is flying in from Washington. The FBI director wants to speak with you personally. Marcus's phone rang. The caller ID showed a blocked number, but Rivera nodded for him to answer. Judge Thompson. The voice was unmistakable, FBI Director James Crawford. I'm ordering a full federal takeover of the Detroit Police Department effective immediately. What happened tonight is an act of war against the federal judiciary. Are you prepared to see this through? Marcus looked at his terrorized wife at his vandalized home, at the corrupt cops being dragged away in federal custody. 6 months of careful investigation had exploded into open warfare between federal and local law enforcement. Director Crawford, Marcus said, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. I've never been more prepared for anything in my life. Good. Because in 1 hour, you're going to hold a press conference that will reshape law enforcement in America. The president is watching. The nation is watching. And Judge Thompson. No more hiding. No more wires. We're going to burn their whole system down. As Crawford hung up, Marcus saw the news vans arriving, their satellite dishes deploying like weapons. The neighbors' security footage of the attack was already being broadcast. The rest stop video had crossed 10 million views. Judge Thompson was trending globally, but then Rivera's phone rang and her face went white. Your Honor, it's Officer Mitchell, from tonight's arrest. He's at Detroit General. He tried to kill himself. The moral weight of the moment crashed down on Marcus. Yes, Mitchell was a corrupt criminal deserving of prosecution. But he was also a human being driven to suicide by the collapse of his world. The investigation meant to bring justice was now destroying lives on both sides. We need to go to the hospital, Marcus said. Sharon pulled back, looking at him in disbelief. Marcus, these people just tried to burn our house down. And that's exactly why I need to go, Marcus replied. Because the moment we become like them, the moment we stop seeing the humanity even in our enemies, we lose the moral authority to change anything. Rivera was already moving toward the car. The hospital is secured. Mitchell is under federal custody, but receiving treatment. He left a note. What does it say? Rivera handed him her phone. Mitchell's confession filled the screen, names, dates, crimes going back a decade. But the last line hit Marcus like a physical blow. Judge Thompson was right. The truth always surfaces. I just wish I'd had the courage to tell it sooner. The drive to Detroit General took 15 minutes that felt like hours. Marcus's phone buzzed constantly. The White House, the Justice Department, civil rights leaders, reporters. The story had evolved from local corruption to national crisis. Detroit was about to become the epicenter of the most significant police reform in American history. At the hospital, federal agents had locked down an entire floor. Marcus found Mitchell in ICU, wrists bandaged, face gray, eyes hollow. When he saw Marcus, tears began streaming down his face. Your Honor, Mitchell whispered, I'm so sorry. Johnson, he made me believe it was us versus them, that we were protecting society from people like you. But watching you tonight, seeing your dignity while we destroyed it, I realized we were the criminals. Marcus pulled a chair close to the bed. Kyle, can I call you Kyle? You have a choice now. You can help us dismantle this system of corruption, or you can protect it with your silence. But either way, you're going to survive this night. You're going to face justice. And maybe, just maybe, you're going to find redemption. Mitchell's confession, over the next hour, revealed a conspiracy that reached into every corner of Detroit law enforcement. The mayor's office had sanctioned illegal quotas. The police union had a slush fund for covering up brutality. District attorneys had a list of judges who would rubber stamp false warrants. "There's something else," Mitchell said, his voice barely audible. "Johnson's not the worst of them. There's a lieutenant in District 3, Vincent Kowalski. He runs a crew that makes Johnson look like a choir boy. They don't just plant drugs, they steal them from evidence and resell them. 3 people have died in custody under Kowalski's watch, all ruled suicides." Marcus felt the investigation expanding, darkening. This wasn't just about civil rights anymore. It was about murder. Drug trafficking, a criminal organization wearing the disguise of law enforcement. "Will you testify?" Marcus asked. Mitchell nodded, then grabbed Marcus's arm with surprising strength. "But, Your Honor, you need to know Kowalski has contacts in the FBI. Someone's been warning him about investigations for years. That's why he's never been caught." The implications were staggering. Corruption not just in local law enforcement, but potentially reaching into federal agencies. Marcus looked at Rivera, who was already on her phone alerting internal affairs. A commotion in the hallway drew their attention. Through the window, Marcus saw Sharon arguing with federal agents demanding to be let through. Behind her stood someone Marcus hadn't expected, Sergeant Patricia Hayes from District 7. "Let them in," Marcus called out. Sharon entered first, her eyes blazing with a fury Marcus had rarely seen in their 30 years of marriage. "The house, Marcus, they destroyed everything. Our photos, my mother's china, your father's flag from his military service. They wanted to erase us." "We'll rebuild," Marcus said, but Sharon shook her head. "No. We'll do more than rebuild. I'm a civil rights attorney. Remember, I've been on the sidelines of your investigation, but not anymore. I'm filing federal lawsuits against every officer involved. I'm going to take their pensions, their homes, everything they value. They wanted war. They've got it." Sergeant Hayes stepped forward, her uniform immaculate despite the chaos of the night. "Judge Thompson, I've been a cop for 18 years. I've watched good officers turn bad and bad officers get worse. Tonight I watched federal agents arrest half my precinct. But I also watched something else. I watched the system finally fight back against itself." She pulled out her badge and gun, setting them on the bedside table. "I'm done being part of the problem. I want to be part of the solution. I'll testify. I'll provide documents. I'll give you 18 years of everything I've seen and couldn't stop." Before Marcus could respond, Rivera's phone exploded with alerts. She turned on the room's television, and Marcus saw himself on every news channel. But it wasn't footage from tonight, it was from 6 months ago, the beginning of the investigation. "Someone leaked the FBI preparation videos," Rivera said, stunned. "The entire undercover operation from the beginning." On screen, Marcus watched himself training with FBI agents, learning to maintain cover, studying the targets. The narrator, clearly an FBI insider, was explaining every detail of the operation. "This is deliberate sabotage," Rivera said. "Someone inside the Bureau is trying to compromise every case we've built." But Marcus saw it differently. "No," he said slowly. "This is someone trying to protect the investigation by making it too public to bury. Look at the uploads, they're from different accounts, different locations. Someone inside the FBI knows there are corrupt agents and is making sure the evidence survives regardless of what happens to us." His phone rang. Director Crawford again, his voice tight with controlled rage. "Judge Thompson, we have a problem. 3 federal agents involved in your investigation have disappeared. Their families received messages saying they had 72 hours to drop all charges or the agents die." The room went silent. The corruption wasn't just fighting back, it was taking hostages. "Who's behind this?" Marcus asked. "We intercepted communications, suggesting it goes all the way to the top. The police commissioner, the mayor, possibly even the governor's office. They're calling it the Blue Line Protocol, a coordinated response to federal intervention." Marcus stood, his decision made. "Then we accelerate everything. The press conference happens now, not in an hour. We name names. We show evidence. We make it impossible for them to operate in shadow." "Your Honor," Rivera protested, "that could get the hostages killed." "Or it could save them," Marcus countered. "These people thrive in darkness in the spaces between public and private knowledge. We drag them into the light and they lose their power." Sharon grabbed his hand. "Marcus, you're talking about declaring war on the entire power structure of Detroit." "No," Marcus said, thinking of Johnson's racist slurs, of his vandalized home, of Mitchell's suicide attempt, of 3 federal agents whose only crime was pursuing justice. "They declared war when they decided some citizens deserved less protection than others, when they chose to be criminals instead of cops. I'm just accepting their terms." As they prepared to leave the hospital, Marcus's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. The text contained a single image, a photograph of the 3 missing federal agents bound and gagged in what looked like a warehouse. The message below read, "Drop the charges or they die. You have 71 hours. This is not a negotiation." Marcus showed the message to Rivera, who immediately began tracing protocols. But Marcus was already thinking ahead. The warehouse in the photo had distinctive windows, old industrial glass, with a peculiar green tint. He'd seen those windows before, in case files from his years on the bench. "I know where they are," he said quietly. "The old Packard plant. Kowalski, the Lieutenant Mitchell, mentioned he ran operations out of there in the 90s. I sentenced 3 of his dealers who described those exact windows." Rivera was already mobilizing units, but Marcus grabbed her arm. "If Kowalski has FBI sources, he'll know you're coming. We need a different approach." "What are you suggesting?" Marcus looked at the television, where news of the investigation dominated every channel, where citizens were already gathering outside District 7 demanding justice, where the Rest Stop video played on endless loop showing Johnson's violence and Marcus's dignity. "We don't go to them," Marcus said. "We make them come to us. Schedule the press conference for the federal courthouse steps. Make it public, every media outlet live coverage. They'll have to make a move, and when they do, we'll be ready." As they left the hospital, Marcus saw something that stopped him cold. Across the street, standing in the rain, were dozens of people. Black and white, young and old, all holding phones with their lights on, all recording. As Marcus emerged, they raised their phones higher, a salute, a promise, a declaration that they too were witnesses now. One young black man stepped forward. "Judge Thompson, my brother was arrested by Officer Johnson 2 years ago. Planted evidence. He's still in prison. There are hundreds like him, thousands. Don't stop. Whatever they threaten, whatever they do, don't stop." Marcus nodded, feeling the weight of not just his own investigation, but the hopes of everyone Johnson and officers like him had destroyed. The FBI had wanted him to document corruption. But this had become something larger, a reckoning with decades of injustice, a chance to fundamentally restructure how power operated in American cities. As the federal convoy pulled away from the hospital, Marcus saw the first protesters arriving at District 7. Within hours, it would be surrounded. The blue line was breaking, and nothing, not hostages, not threats, not the entire corrupt machinery of Detroit, could stop what was coming. The press conference would happen in 3 hours. In that time, Marcus had to save 3 federal agents, expose a conspiracy that reached to the state's highest offices, and survive whatever desperate moves the corrupted system would make to protect itself. He looked at the wire sitting on the dashboard, silent now, its work done. But the real recording was just beginning. Not in hidden devices, but in millions of phones held by citizens who finally understood that watching was a form of resistance, that recording was an act of revolution. The war for Detroit's soul had begun. The federal courthouse steps were already swarming with media when Marcus's convoy arrived through the underground entrance. Rivera had insisted on the secured route after intelligence suggested at least 3 credible assassination threats. But Marcus knew hiding wasn't an option anymore, not with 3 federal agents' lives hanging in the balance and only 68 hours left on the kidnappers' deadline. In the secured conference room, Director Crawford's face filled the video screen, his expression grim. Judge Thompson, we've identified the missing agents. Sarah Chen, Michael Rodriguez, and David Park, all deep cover specialists who've been working your case. The kidnappers knew exactly who to take. Inside information, Marcus said. It wasn't a question. Has to be, but we have a bigger problem. The governor just called a special session. He's proposing emergency legislation to limit federal oversight of local law enforcement. He's calling it the Michigan Sovereignty Act. If it passes, your entire investigation becomes illegal retroactively. Sharon, who'd been reviewing legal documents, looked up sharply. He can't do that. Federal supremacy. He can try, Crawford interrupted. And while the court sorted out which could take months, the corruption continues. Judge Thompson, we need that press conference to shift public opinion before the legislature votes. Marcus was already moving toward the door when his phone buzzed. Another unknown number, another photo. This time, Agent Chen was holding today's newspaper. Her face bruised blood on her collar. The message read, "Every hour you delay costs them. 67 hours remaining." "They're watching us," Rivera said, checking her tablet. "Social media's going crazy. The hashtag #SaveTheAgents is trending. But so is #BackTheBlue. The city's choosing sides." Through the bulletproof windows, Marcus could see the crowds gathering outside. Not just media now, but citizens. Two distinct groups, one holding signs supporting the investigation, another backing the police. The tension between them was palpable, barely contained by the federal security perimeter. "Your Honor." Sergeant Hayes entered, still in civilian clothes, after turning in her badge. "I've been going through my files. I found something you need to see." She handed over a flash drive. 3 weeks ago, Lieutenant Kowalski requisitioned surveillance equipment for a training exercise at the Packard plant, the same location you identified. He's been planning this. Rivera immediately pulled up the files. Purchase orders, duty rosters, communication logs, all pointing to a sophisticated operation that had been weeks in preparation. This wasn't a panic response to tonight, Marcus realized. They knew the investigation was coming. They've been preparing to fight back. "There's more," Hayes continued. "I recognized one of the names on the duty roster. Tommy Chen, he's Sarah Chen's brother. He's a Detroit cop, District 3. The room went silent. The implications were staggering. Agent Chen's own brother was potentially involved in her kidnapping. Marcus's phone rang. The caller ID showed Chief of Police Raymond Morrison, the man who'd run Detroit PD for 12 years, who'd attended Marcus's judicial investiture, who'd sent flowers when Marcus's father died. "Ray," Marcus answered, putting it on speaker. "Marcus, what the hell are you doing?" Morrison's voice was strained, desperate. "You're destroying everything we've built. 40 years of progress." Progress. Marcus couldn't contain his anger. "Your officers tried to burn my house down with my wife inside. That was rogue elements. I had nothing to do with—" "Ray, I have video of you meeting with Officer Johnson 6 weeks ago. You knew exactly what he was doing. You approved it." The silence stretched for long seconds. Then Morrison's voice changed, becoming harder, more dangerous. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, Marcus. This isn't about a few bad cops. This is about maintaining order in a city on the edge. You remove that thin blue line and chaos follows." "The thin blue line just kidnapped 3 federal agents," Marcus shot back. "I can get them released," Morrison said quickly. Too quickly. "Call off the press conference. Drop the federal charges. Let us clean our own house. Your agents go free and we all walk away." "You're admitting you know where they are." Morrison realized his mistake. "I'm saying I have influence. I can make calls." "You're complicit," Marcus said flatly. "This call is being recorded, Ray. You just became a co-conspirator." The line went dead. Rivera was already coordinating with tactical teams. "We have probable cause now." Morrison's admission. She was cut off by the sound of breaking glass. A brick had been thrown through one of the courthouse's historic windows. Federal security be damned. Through the breach, they could hear the crowd's roar growing louder. The two groups were clashing bottles, flying riot police deploying. "They're trying to stop the press conference," Sharon said, watching the chaos below. "Create enough violence that we have to cancel." Marcus stood straightening his tie. "Then we do it now. Not in an hour, not after we're fully prepared. Now." "Your Honor, that's suicide," Rivera protested. "The security situation. Every minute we wait, those agents suffer. Every minute we wait, evidence disappears. Every minute we wait, they win." Marcus moved toward the door. "I've hidden behind FBI protection for 6 months. No more. If they want to stop me, they'll have to do it in front of the entire world." The walk from the conference room to the courthouse steps felt like miles. Federal agents formed a human corridor, their faces tense, hands on weapons. Through the glass doors, Marcus could see the mass of humanity outside: protesters, counter-protesters, media, and somewhere among them, likely assassins. As the doors opened, the noise hit like a physical force. Hundreds of voices shouting, chanting, demanding. Marcus stepped to the microphone stand, and gradually, impossibly, silence spread through the crowd. "My name is Judge Marcus Thompson," he began, his voice carrying across the plaza. "6 months ago, I took an oath to expose corruption in the Detroit Police Department. Tonight, that corruption tried to murder my wife. It has kidnapped 3 federal agents, and it reaches to the highest levels of Michigan government." A shot rang out. Marcus didn't flinch, even as federal agents swarmed, even as the crowd screamed and scattered. The bullet had struck the courthouse wall 3 feet to his left, a warning, not an attempt. "I'm still standing," Marcus said into the microphone, his voice steady. "And I'm still talking." The crowd, those who hadn't fled, began moving closer, phones raised, recording everything. "Officer Derek Johnson," Marcus continued, "arrested me tonight for the crime of driving while black, but he didn't know I was recording." He pulled out his phone, connected it to the courthouse PA system, and played the audio. Johnson's racist slurs echoed across the plaza, his admission of planting evidence, his assault on a federal judge. The crowd's energy shifted, anger focusing into purpose. "This is not about one racist cop," Marcus said. "This is about a system that protected him, promoted him, enabled him. A system that just tried to burn my house down. A system that has kidnapped federal agents." Another shot. This time, the courthouse door exploded in a shower of glass. But instead of running, the crowd pressed closer, forming a human shield around Marcus. "They want me to stop talking," Marcus said, blood running down his cheek from flying glass. "They want you to stop listening, but we're not stopping. Not today, not ever." His phone buzzed. Rivera from inside. "Surveillance spotted shooters on the parking garage roof. SWAT is moving." Marcus kept talking, even as he heard sirens, even as he saw federal agents racing toward the parking garage. "I have here a list of every officer involved in this corruption ring." He held up a thick folder. 93 names, 427 falsified arrests, 62 cases of planted evidence, $18 million in stolen money and drugs. The crowd was chanting now, "Release the names, release the names." "But first," Marcus said, "we're going to save those 3 agents, and I'm asking for your help." He turned to face the news cameras directly. "Lieutenant Vincent Kowalski of District 3, we know you're watching. We know you have agents Chen Rodriguez and Park at the Packard plant. You have 1 hour to release them. After that, I release everything, every crime, every cover-up, every dirty secret of every corrupt cop in Detroit." A commotion at the edge of the crowd. Federal agents dragging 2 men in tactical gear from the parking garage, the shooters who'd fired at Marcus. But something was wrong. Rivera was running toward the podium, her face white. She grabbed the microphone. "Those aren't cops. They're military contractors. Blackwater types." She turned to the cameras. "Someone hired mercenaries to assassinate a federal judge." The crowd exploded. What had been anger became rage. The barrier between protesters and counter-protesters dissolved as citizens of Detroit united against a common enemy, whoever was willing to hire killers to silence the truth. Marcus's phone rang. Unknown number. "Speaker," Rivera mouthed. Marcus answered, broadcasting through the PA system. Heavy breathing, then a woman's voice, weak but defiant. "Judge Thompson. Agent Chen. They're moving us. Heard gunfire on the radio. They're panicking. Judge, they're going to—" The line went dead. "They're mobile," Rivera said, already coordinating. "All units, the hostages are being moved from Packard plant. Set up roadblocks." "No," Marcus said. "No roadblocks. They'll see them coming. We need to think differently." He turned to the crowd. "Everyone here with a car, we need you. Create traffic everywhere. Slow the entire city to a crawl. Make it impossible for them to move those agents without being seen." Within minutes, Detroit's streets began filling with vehicles. Not a coordinated blockade, but organic, chaotic congestion. Citizens live streaming from their cars, watching for any sign of the kidnapped agents. Morrison called again. "Marcus, you're creating anarchy." "I'm creating accountability," Marcus replied. "Release the agents, Ray. It's over." "You don't understand." Morrison's voice cracked. "It's not just cops. It's judges, prosecutors, city council members. If this comes out, the entire city government collapses." "Then it collapses," Marcus said. "And we rebuild it right." A shout from the crowd. "Their Channel 7 helicopter. They've spotted something." On phones throughout the plaza, the aerial footage showed a police van racing through side streets trying to navigate the spontaneous traffic jam. Federal vehicles were converging, but the van was nimble, desperate. "Judge Thompson." A young man pushed through the crowd holding an iPad. "I'm a hacker with Anonymous. We've been monitoring police communications. That van, it's heading for the river. There's a boat waiting. They're trying to get the agents out of state." Marcus looked at Rivera. "The river's 5 minutes away. Federal units are 10 minutes out." Without hesitation, Marcus started running. Not away from danger, but toward it. The crowd parted, then followed. Hundreds of people streaming through Detroit's streets, following a federal judge in a suit and tie, racing to save 3 lives. Sharon's voice in his ear, she'd grabbed a radio. "Marcus, what are you doing?" "Being visible." He gasped, his 53-year-old body protesting the sprint. "They can't disappear if everyone's watching." The van had stopped at the riverfront, trapped between the crowd approaching from behind and the boat that hadn't yet arrived. Through the mass of people, Marcus could see Lieutenant Kowalski standing by the van, weapon drawn, looking like a cornered animal. "Stop right there!" Kowalski shouted, pointing his gun at the crowd. "Federal agents or not, I'll shoot!" But the crowd didn't stop. They spread out, surrounding the van at a distance, phones raised like shields. Every angle covered, every moment recorded. "It's over, Vincent," Marcus called out, pushing through to the front. "The boat's not coming. We've had the river patrol standing by for an hour." That was a lie, but Kowalski's eyes darted to the water, saw the absence of his escape route, and his shoulders sagged. "You don't know what you've done," Kowalski said. "The system you're destroying, it kept this city from burning. We did what we had to do." "You became criminals," Marcus replied, stepping closer. "You became the very thing you swore to protect against." "Easy for you to say. From your federal bench," Kowalski spat. "You never had to patrol these streets, never had to make split-second decisions, never had to maintain order when order was impossible." "You're right," Marcus admitted, surprising everyone. "I've never walked in your shoes. But that doesn't excuse what you've become. It doesn't justify the people you've hurt, the lives you've destroyed, the agents you've kidnapped." Federal vehicles were arriving now, agents deploying with tactical precision. But Marcus held up his hand, keeping them back. "You have a choice, Vincent. Release the agents, surrender peacefully, and help us reform the system. Or go down as the cop who murdered 3 federal agents on live stream." Kowalski's hand shook on his weapon. Behind him, the van's door opened slightly. Agent Park's face appeared bloodied, but alive. "They're all alive," Park called out. "Chen and Rodriguez too. We're okay." The crowd surged forward, slightly protective, demanding. Kowalski was surrounded not by enemies, but by citizens, witnesses, people who refused to look away. "Tommy Chen," Marcus called out. "I know you're in that van. Your sister Sarah is in there too. You going to let her die for this? For them?" The van's driver door opened. A young Asian officer stepped out, hands raised, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm so sorry. They said they'd kill my family if I didn't—" "Shut up," Kowalski screamed, swinging his weapon toward Tommy Chen. The crowd reacted instinctively, surging forward, not attacking, but interposing, putting their bodies between the gun and its target. Marcus found himself at the front, staring down the barrel of Kowalski's weapon. "You'll have to shoot through me," Marcus said quietly. "Through all of us. And everyone will see it. Everyone will know that this is what the thin blue line really means: murder to protect corruption." Kowalski's finger moved to the trigger. The crowd held its breath. Hundreds of phones captured the moment a corrupt cop about to execute a federal judge in broad daylight. "Vincent," a voice called out. Chief Morrison emerged from a police cruiser, his face haggard, defeated. "Stand down. That's an order." "Chief." Kowalski turned confused. "You said we had to—" "It's over," Morrison said. "Judge Thompson wins. The whole world is watching Vincent. Put the gun down." Kowalski looked around at the cameras, at the crowd, at the federal agents with rifles trained on him, at the 3 hostages he'd failed to disappear. His arm dropped. Federal agents moved in swift and professional. The 3 kidnapped agents were extracted from the van, medical teams rushing to treat them. Kowalski and Tommy Chen were cuffed, their rights read, in front of hundreds of witnesses. Morrison approached Marcus, pulling off his badge and weapon, offering them in surrender. 23 years ago, you sentenced my partner to prison for dealing drugs. I swore I'd protect other cops from judges like you. But somewhere along the way, protecting cops became protecting criminals." He looked at the crowd, at the city, watching its police force collapse and rebuild in real time. "I'll testify. Everything. Everyone. Just try to save what good is left." Marcus took the badge, feeling its weight, not just the metal, but the responsibility it represented, perverted and corrupted, but still essential to society. "Chief Morrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy to kidnap federal agents," Rivera said, moving in with cuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." As Morrison was led away, Marcus turned to see Sharon pushing through the crowd. She threw her arms around him, sobbing with relief. "You absolute fool," she whispered. "Running toward armed kidnappers. What were you thinking?" "I was thinking about all the people who couldn't run toward justice because they didn't have a federal badge protecting them," Marcus replied, holding her tight. "I was thinking it was time for that to change." Agent Chen, supported by medics but refusing a stretcher, approached Marcus. Her face was swollen, one eye closed, but her spirit unbroken. "Your Honor, there's something you need to know. While they held us, we heard everything. The corruption, it's not just Michigan. They have connections in Illinois, Ohio, Indiana. This is regional, organized, decades in the making." The magnitude of what they'd uncovered was staggering. Not just a few bad cops, but an entire shadow system operating within law enforcement across the Midwest. Marcus's phone buzzed. "Director Crawford. Judge Thompson, the president is watching. She wants to speak with you. Now." Marcus held the phone like it weighed 1,000 pounds as President Catherine Walsh's voice filled the secured federal command center they'd established in the courthouse. Around him, Rivera, Sharon, and the rescued federal agents listened on speaker, their faces reflecting the gravity of the moment. "Judge Thompson," the president said, her voice carrying that distinctive mixture of authority and exhaustion that marked her 3rd year in office. In 40 minutes, I'm addressing the nation about what happened in Detroit today. Before I do, I need to know how deep does this go. Marcus looked at the evidence boards hastily assembled around the room, covered with photos, connection lines, financial records. Madam President, based on what we've uncovered in the last 6 hours, this involves at least 4 states, over 300 officers, and potentially $50 million in stolen funds and drugs. The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds. Then, Judge Thompson, I'm invoking emergency federal oversight of the Detroit Police Department effective immediately. And I'm appointing you as special federal prosecutor to lead a joint task force. You'll have unlimited resources, full immunity to investigate anywhere this leads. Sharon grabbed Marcus's arm. That's a death sentence. They've already tried to kill him twice today. Mrs. Thompson, is that you? The president asked. You're right to be concerned, which is why I'm also activating a full Secret Service detail for your family effective immediately. Through the window, Marcus could see the crowd outside had grown to thousands. The live stream showed similar gatherings in Chicago, Cleveland, Indianapolis. Agent Chen had been right. This was regional, and the region was watching. Madam President, Marcus said, there's something else. Mitchell, the officer who attempted suicide, he's conscious and wants to make a full confession. He says there's a meeting happening tonight. Every major player in the corruption ring, they think I'll be too busy with the press to notice. Where? The Renaissance Center. Private club on the top floor. Judges, prosecutors, police brass from 4 states. They're planning their response, destroying evidence, coordinating their legal defense. The president's voice hardened. Then we take them all. Tonight. Judge Thompson, you have full federal authority. End this. As the call ended, Rivera was already mobilizing resources. We'll need surveillance tactical teams warrants. We have something better, Agent Rodriguez said from his hospital gurney, which he'd refused to leave despite his injuries. During our captivity, Tommy Chen broke. He told us everything. The meetings are recorded, they keep blackmail material on each other to ensure loyalty. The recordings are in a safe in the club. Marcus felt the pieces clicking together. They'll destroy those recordings the moment they know we're coming. Unless we're already there, Sharon said, surprising everyone. The Renaissance Center also houses the federal prosecutor's office. I have access. I could get a small team inside before they know what's happening. Absolutely not, Marcus said immediately. They already tried to kill you once. And they failed, Sharon replied, steel in her voice. Marcus, for 30 years, I've watched you fight for justice from the bench. Tonight, I fight with you. Before Marcus could respond, Sergeant Hayes burst in. Your Honor, we have a problem. Johnson's being released. What? Rivera pulled up her tablet. That's impossible. He's being held on federal charges. A judge just signed an emergency release order. Judge Harold Brennan. Hayes showed them the document. Johnson's lawyer claimed the arrest was illegal, that you exceeded your authority as an undercover operative. Marcus knew Brennan. They'd served together on various judicial committees. The betrayal cut deep. Brennan's one of them. He's dirty. It gets worse, Hayes continued. Johnson's holding a press conference in 20 minutes. He's claiming he's the victim, that this whole thing is a setup by the federal government to take over local law enforcement. Through the window, they could see counter-protesters gathering, many carrying Blue Lives Matter signs. The narrative was being contested in real time, the truth fighting against a well-oiled propaganda machine. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Judge Thompson, this is Officer Davis Johnson's former partner. I was in the crowd today. I saw everything. Johnson's heading to the Renaissance Center after his press conference. He's going to destroy evidence. I'll testify against him, but you need to stop him first. It's a trap, Rivera said immediately. Davis is Johnson's partner. Or Johnson betrayed him too, Marcus said, remembering the fear in Davis's eyes during the traffic stop. Abusers always have multiple victims. The television screens around the command center lit up with breaking news. Johnson was already at his press conference, standing beside his lawyer, looking every inch the persecuted hero. I was doing my job, Johnson said into the microphones. Judge Thompson was driving erratically. He refused to comply with lawful orders. And now because he's a federal judge, I'm being crucified. Where's the justice for police officers who risk their lives every day? The crowd behind him cheered. Marcus recognized several officers from District 7, including some who'd participated in the raid on his house. They were closing ranks, protecting their own. He's lying with such confidence, Sharon said, disgusted. Because he's done it successfully for years, Marcus replied. Then to Rivera. We're going to the Renaissance Center, now. Your Honor, you can't be serious. You're the most wanted man in Detroit by corrupt cops. Walking into their meeting is exactly what they won't expect. Marcus stood energized by sudden clarity. They think I'll hide behind federal protection, fight this in the courts, take months or years to bring them down. But we're going to walk right into their sanctuary and take everything. Agent Chen, despite her injuries, stood as well. I'm coming with you. Agent Chen, you can barely walk. Judge Thompson, my own brother helped kidnap me. My family's honor. My badge, everything I am demands. I see this through. One by one, others stood. Rodriguez struggling, but determined. Park, his arm in a sling, but his eyes burning with purpose. Hayes, the honest cop, who'd finally found her moment to matter. Even Sharon, despite Marcus's protests. This is insane, Rivera said. But she was checking her weapon, preparing for what they all knew was coming. The convoy that left the courthouse was unlike anything Detroit had ever seen. Federal vehicles surrounded by citizen cars, hundreds of people who'd decided that tonight they were part of something bigger. The live streams showed the procession moving through the city like a river of justice heading toward the Renaissance Center's twin towers. Johnson's press conference was ending just as they arrived. Marcus watched him on the mobile command center's screens, saw the moment Johnson spotted the federal convoy, saw the confidence drain from his face. He knows, Rivera said. He's warning them. Let him, Marcus replied. Panic makes people sloppy. The Renaissance Center's lobby was a marvel of modern architecture, all glass and steel and marble. Security tried to stop them, but federal badges and warrants cleared the path. As they reached the express elevator to the top floor club, Marcus's phone rang. Governor Michael Patterson's voice was ice cold. Judge Thompson, you're exceeding your authority. I'm ordering state police to arrest you if you don't stand down immediately. Governor, I have a federal warrant and presidential authority. Your state police would be obstructing justice. This is Michigan, not Washington. We handle our own problems. Your problems just tried to burn my wife alive, Marcus shot back. Your problems kidnapped federal agents. Your problems are now America's problems. You have no idea what you're destroying, Patterson said, desperation creeping into his voice. The balance we've maintained, the peace we've kept. Built on corruption and brutality, Marcus interrupted. Governor, are you calling me from the Renaissance Center? Are you at this meeting? The line went dead. Marcus looked at the team. The governor's here. This is bigger than we thought. The elevator rose toward the top floor, each number marking their ascent toward a confrontation that would reshape American law enforcement. Through the glass walls, Detroit spread below them, lights twinkling like stars, unaware that its power structure was about to collapse. 60 seconds out, Rivera announced. Remember, we need those recordings intact. The elevator doors opened to reveal the club's opulent interior, leather and mahogany crystal chandeliers, windows offering a commanding view of the city. And there, around a massive conference table, sat the architects of corruption. Police commissioners from 4 states. Judges Marcus had known for years. Prosecutors who'd built careers on false convictions. And at the head of the table, Governor Patterson himself. Judge Thompson, Patterson said, standing slowly. You're making a terrible mistake. No, Governor. The mistake was thinking you could operate above the law. Marcus stepped forward, his team spreading out behind him. Everyone in this room is under arrest for conspiracy racketeering and violation of civil rights under color of law. Johnson stood up from his seat at the table, his face twisted with rage. You can't do this. We are the law. No, Marcus said quietly. You're criminals who happen to have badges. Commissioner Morrison laughed bitterly. You think you've won. You have no idea how many of us there are. Every major city, every state house. You're fighting the entire system. Then the entire system needs to change, Sharon said, stepping beside her husband. Judge Brennan, the one who'd signed Johnson's release, stood carefully. Marcus, be reasonable. We can make a deal. You've made your point. Take Johnson, take a few others, declare victory. But if you tear down everything, chaos follows. Show me the recordings, Marcus said, ignoring the offer. What recordings? Patterson asked, but his eyes flicked involuntarily toward a painting on the far wall. Agent Chen was already moving her injuries forgotten. She pulled the painting aside, revealing a wall safe. Judge Thompson, I'll need a warrant to— You have it, Marcus said. Federal Emergency Authority. As Chen worked on the safe, the room's atmosphere grew increasingly desperate. Marcus saw hands moving toward concealed weapons, saw the tension building toward violence. Nobody moves, Rivera announced, her weapon drawn. Federal agents have this entire floor surrounded. That was a bluff. They had maybe a dozen agents, but the corruption ring didn't know that. The safe clicked open. Chen pulled out Drive's documents and photographs. Her face went pale as she scanned them. Judge Thompson, it's all here. Every crime, every payoff, every murder made to look like suicide. 20 years of evidence. Destroy it, Patterson shouted. Johnson lunged for the evidence, but Marcus intercepted him, the two men crashing into the conference table. At 53, Marcus was no match for Johnson's strength, but he didn't need to be. He just needed to hold on long enough. Johnson's fist connected with Marcus's jaw, spinning him around. Blood filled his mouth, but Marcus grabbed the drives, holding them tight even as Johnson rained blows down on him. You think you're better than us? Johnson screamed, his fists finding Marcus's ribs. You think your fancy degree and your federal badge make you superior? Through the pain, Marcus managed to speak. No. I think doing the right thing makes me right. Sharon struck Johnson with a chair, sending him sprawling. Federal agents flooded in. Rivera hadn't been bluffing after all. The room erupted in chaos as corrupt officials tried to flee, only to find every exit blocked. Governor Patterson, Agent Rodriguez announced, limping forward but official. You're under arrest. You can't arrest a sitting governor, Patterson protested. Watch us, Rivera said, producing handcuffs. As the corrupt officials were arrested one by one, Marcus noticed something wrong. The drives Chen had retrieved were blinking a countdown timer showing 30 seconds. They're rigged to delete, Chen shouted. Remote wipe protocol. Marcus grabbed the drives and ran to the window, Sharon beside him. The command center downstairs, they have isolation equipment. 20 seconds, Chen called. Without hesitation, Marcus shattered the window with a chair. The wind at this height was tremendous, threatening to pull them out. Are you insane? Sharon shouted over the gale. There's a federal tech van directly below, Marcus said, wrapping the drives in his jacket. They can catch them with their equipment, preserve the data before it wipes. 10 seconds. Marcus threw the wrapped drives out the window, watching them plummet toward the street below. Through the live streams on his phone, he could see federal agents scrambling positioning equipment. 5 seconds. The drives landed in a capture net the agents had deployed. On the screen, Marcus saw technicians rushing to connect them to isolation hardware. 2 seconds. The screens went dark. Then one by one files began appearing. The wipe had been stopped with less than a second to spare. 20 years of evidence preserved. The room had gone quiet, except for the wind through the broken window. Johnson sat handcuffed on the floor, staring at nothing. Patterson maintained his political composure even in custody. Brennan wept openly, his judicial career destroyed. Marcus's phone rang. President Walsh again. Judge Thompson, I'm watching the news. Is it true, the governor? Yes, Madam President. The governor, 4 police commissioners, 6 judges, 18 prosecutors, and over 40 officers. The evidence we recovered implicates another 200 individuals across the Midwest. My God. The president was quiet for a moment. Judge Thompson, I'm appointing you to lead a national commission on police reform. This can never happen again. With respect, Madam President, I'm just one man. This happened because thousands of good people stayed silent while bad people acted. We need systemic change, not just new leadership. Then give me recommendations. You have carte blanche. As the call ended, Marcus looked around the destroyed club. The city's power brokers were in handcuffs, their empire of corruption in ruins. But he knew this was just the beginning. Johnson, Marcus said, approaching the defeated officer. You asked if I thought I was better than you. The answer is no. We're both just men. The difference is I chose to serve justice, and you chose to pervert it. Johnson looked up, his eyes hollow. You don't understand what you've done. The streets will burn without us keeping order. Then we'll build something better from the ashes, Marcus replied. Through the broken window, the sounds of the city rose up siren shouts, but also something else. Singing. The crowd below had begun singing, We Shall Overcome, their voices carrying up 40 floors to where justice had finally been served. Marcus felt Sharon's hand in his, felt the weight of the moment. In 6 months, he'd gone from a federal judge to an undercover investigator to a national symbol of resistance against corruption. But the real work was just beginning. Your Honor, Agent Chen said, holding up one of the recovered drives. There's something else you need to see. These records, they show payments coming from overseas. Russia, China, Saudi Arabia. This wasn't just corruption, it was foreign influence buying American law enforcement. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just about racist cops or local corruption. This was about national security, about foreign powers corrupting American justice from within. Rivera's radio crackled. We have a problem. Officers loyal to the corruption ring are mobilizing. They're heading here armed, planning to free the prisoners. Marcus looked out at the city, at the crowds below, at the police vehicles racing toward the Renaissance Center. The war wasn't over, it was escalating. Let them come, he said quietly. The whole world is watching. If they want to stage a coup against federal authority, let them do it on live stream. Marcus, Sharon said, you're talking about a potential shootout in the middle of Detroit. No, Marcus replied, his voice steady, despite the blood still running from his mouth where Johnson had struck him. I'm talking about the moment America decides whether we're a nation of laws or a nation of badges. Whether justice means something or whether it's just another word for power. The elevators chimed. The corrupt cops were coming. Rivera and her agents took defensive positions. The prisoners, even in handcuffs, smirked with anticipation of rescue. But Marcus walked to the broken window, looking down at the thousands of citizens surrounding the building. Their phones raised their voices, united. He thought of the family at the rest stop who'd refused to stop recording. The trucker who'd stood up when it mattered. Officer Davis, who'd finally found his conscience. Mitchell in his hospital bed, choosing confession over silence. They're not coming to rescue anyone, Marcus said with sudden certainty. They're coming to surrender. How can you know that? Rivera asked. Marcus held up his phone, showing the live streams. Every major news network was broadcasting. The president was tweeting. Celebrities were sharing. The world was watching Detroit, and Detroit was choosing its side. The elevator doors opened. 20 officers emerged, weapons drawn. But behind them came hundreds of citizens who'd somehow made it past security phones recording voices chanting. The lead officer, someone Marcus didn't recognize, looked at the scene. The arrested officials, the federal agents, the broken window, the bloodied judge who'd brought down an empire. Judge Thompson, the officer said. then slowly placed his weapon on the ground. Detroit PD stands with justice. One by one, the other officers followed suit. The rescue had become a surrender. The coup had become a capitulation. Johnson watched his would-be rescuers abandon him, his face cycling through rage, disbelief, and finally devastating comprehension. The thin blue line hadn't just been crossed, it had been erased. "It's over," Marcus said, not to anyone in particular, but to the moment itself. The federal courthouse was transformed into a fortress of justice as dawn broke over Detroit. Marcus stood in the war room they'd established, surrounded by evidence boxes, digital screens showing feeds from holding cells, and exhausted federal agents who'd worked through the night processing hundreds of arrests. The scope of what they'd uncovered in the 12 hours since the Renaissance Center raid was staggering. "Your Honor," Agent Rivera said, her voice hoarse from coordinating operations, "we've identified assets from 3 foreign intelligence services in the payment records. The corruption wasn't just about money, it was about destabilizing American law enforcement from within." Marcus studied the financial web on the main screen, tracing payments from shell companies in Moscow, Beijing, and Riyadh to police union accounts, then to individual officers. "They didn't need to invade us. They just needed to corrupt us." Sharon entered with coffee and a grim expression. "Marcus Mitchell's awake. He says he has something critical evidence he hid before his suicide attempt, but he'll only talk to you." The hospital room where Mitchell lay was under heavy federal guard. The man who'd helped arrest Marcus just hours ago looked diminished, hollow, aged a decade overnight. When he saw Marcus, fresh tears streamed down his face. "Judge Thompson, I need to tell you about the children." Marcus felt ice in his veins. "What children?" "There's a trafficking ring. Johnson wasn't just planting drugs, he was taking kids during drug raids, claiming they were going into protective services. But they disappeared, shipped overseas." Mitchell's voice broke. "I found out 3 months ago. That's when I started drinking, stopped sleeping. I couldn't stop it, couldn't report it. Johnson said he'd kill my family." Marcus gripped the bed rail, his knuckles white. Everything they'd uncovered, the corruption, the foreign payments, the civil rights violations, paled before this revelation. "How many?" Marcus asked, though he dreaded the answer. "At least 40 over 5 years, maybe more. Johnson kept records in a storage unit. He called it his insurance policy." Mitchell grabbed Marcus's arm weakly. "Unit 447 at Detroit Self-Storage. The code is 031507, the date of his first kidnapping." Rivera was already mobilizing units, but Marcus knew they had to be careful. If Johnson had accomplices still free, they might destroy the evidence, or worse harm any children still in captivity. Marcus's phone rang. President Walsh. "Judge Thompson, I'm watching a disturbing intelligence briefing. The foreign payments Agent Rivera discovered, they're part of something called Operation Fracture, a coordinated effort by hostile nations to destroy American institutions from within. Madam President, we've just discovered evidence of child trafficking connected to this network." The silence on the other end stretched painfully. Then, "Dear God, Judge Thompson, I'm deploying military assets to support you. Whatever you need, wherever this leads you, have the full weight of the federal government behind you." As Marcus ended the call, Sharon touched his shoulder. "The storage unit, it could be a trap. Or children could be dying while we hesitate," Marcus replied. He turned to Rivera. "We go now. Full tactical deployment." The convoy that raced toward Detroit Self-Storage was massive FBI ATF Secret Service, even military vehicles the president had authorized. The live stream followers had grown to millions worldwide, tracking every movement, every development. At the storage facility, Johnson's unit stood like a monument to evil. The tactical team breached it, carefully checking for traps. Inside, they found horror photographs, documents, transaction records, and a laptop still running showing a live feed. "Christ," Rivera breathed. "There are kids on this feed. They're being held somewhere." The tech team traced the signal frantically. It's coming from the Port District. Warehouse 19. Marcus was already moving. That's 5 minutes away. Your Honor, you're a judge, not a tactical officer. And those are children, not cases, Marcus shot back. Every second matters. The warehouse district at dawn was eerily quiet fog rolling off the Detroit River, obscuring vision. Warehouse 19 looked abandoned, but thermal imaging showed heat signatures inside 12 small ones, 3 adult-sized. Children confirmed, the tactical commander announced. 3 guards. We go on my signal. Wait, Marcus said, studying the building. If they have the children wired with explosives. His phone rang. Johnson calling from federal custody. Judge Thompson. Johnson's voice was different now, desperate. You found my storage unit. Where are the children, Johnson? Safe. For now. But my associates have dead man switches. If they don't receive a call from me every hour, those kids disappear forever. Marcus checked his watch. When's the next call? 7 minutes. Rivera started to speak, but Marcus held up his hand. What do you want? Full immunity, new identity, $10 million, and a plane to a non-extradition country. You know that's impossible. Then 40 kids die. Your choice, Judge. Your precious justice or their lives. Marcus looked at the warehouse at the federal agents ready to breach at Sharon who'd followed despite his protests. 6 minutes. Johnson, you're going to make that call. You're going to tell your associates to release the children. And you're going to do it because somewhere buried under all that hate and corruption, there's still a human being who knows this is wrong. Johnson laughed bitterly. You think appeals to my conscience will work? I don't have one. Then think about this. Every federal agent here has orders to shoot to kill if those children are harmed. Your associates will die. You'll face 40 counts of murder. 1. Michigan has the death penalty for killing children. 5 minutes. But if you make that call, if you save those kids, that's 40 counts of conspiracy instead of murder. Life in prison instead of death row. Your family gets to visit instead of attending your execution. The line was quiet. 4 minutes. Johnson, you said I didn't understand the streets, the choices you had to make. But right now, you have the simplest choice in the world: be the monster everyone thinks you are, or be the man who at the very end did one right thing. 3 minutes. They'll kill me in prison, Johnson said quietly. Cops who hurt kids don't last long inside. We'll put you in protective custody, federal facility. You'll live. 2 minutes. I want it in writing. The deal. Signed by you, a federal judge. Marcus grabbed a tablet, typed rapidly, applied his digital signature. Done. Sending now. 1 minute. Johnson's breathing was audible through the phone. 40 seconds. 30, 20. Johnson? I'm calling them, Johnson said. Put me on speaker so you can hear. The warehouse line rang. A gruff voice answered. Yeah. It's Johnson. Release the kids. All of them. Now. What? That's not the plan. The plan's changed. Federal agents are outside. You let those kids walk out, you might live. You hurt them, you definitely die. Your choice. Marcus watched the warehouse through binoculars. The main door opened. Children began emerging, frightened, malnourished, some barely able to walk. Medical teams rushed forward, federal agents providing cover. One child, a girl no more than 8, looked directly at Marcus as she passed. The gratitude in her eyes broke something inside him. He'd presided over thousands of cases, delivered justice countless times, but nothing compared to this moment. 37. Agent Chen counted. 38, 39. That's all of them. 39 children recovered alive. Mitchell said 40, Marcus said urgently. Where's the last child? Gunfire erupted from the warehouse. The guards had chosen to fight. Federal agents returned fire with overwhelming force. In seconds, it was over. The tactical team entered, clearing room by room. Judge Thompson. The commander called over radio. You need to see this. Inside the warehouse, past makeshift cells and evidence of horror, they found a small room. On the wall, a map marked with routes, cities' connections spanning the globe. And in the corner, a young boy, maybe 10, holding a journal. "He's been documenting everything," the tactical commander said, reading over the child's shoulder. "Names, dates where the other kids were taken. This child is evidence of a global trafficking network." Marcus knelt beside the boy. "You're safe now. What's your name?" "David," the boy whispered. "David Kim. They took me 2 years ago, said I was dead. My parents, do they still remember me?" "We'll find them," Marcus promised. "You're going home." As medical teams evacuated the children, Marcus's phone rang. Director Crawford's voice was urgent. "Judge Thompson, we have a situation. The media has Johnson's confession, the call where he ordered the children's release. They're calling him a hero, saying he saved those kids." Marcus felt rage building. Johnson, who'd kidnapped these children, being painted as their savior. "Let them," Sharon said quietly, reading his expression. "The children are safe. That's what matters. But the truth will come out at trial. For now, let's focus on reuniting 40 families." The federal courthouse became a reunion center. Parents who'd been told their children were dead runaways or missing sobbed as they held kids they'd never expected to see again. The media coverage was overwhelming every network, every platform, the story dominating global news. David Kim's parents arrived from California, having driven through the night. The reunion was captured on 1,000 cameras, but Marcus turned away, giving them privacy in their joy. "Your Honor," Rivera approached with a tablet. "The President's about to address the nation." On screen, President Walsh stood at the Oval Office podium. "My fellow Americans, today we witness the best and worst of humanity. The worst, a network of corruption and evil that trafficked in children's lives. The best, the courage of one judge who risked everything to expose it." The president continued outlining sweeping reforms, federal oversight, a complete restructuring of law enforcement accountability. But Marcus wasn't listening anymore. He was watching Johnson on another screen, being transported to federal prison, his face visible through the transport van's window. Their eyes met through cameras and screens and distance. Johnson mouthed something, maybe, "Thank you," maybe, "I'm sorry," maybe nothing at all. Then the van turned a corner, and he was gone, heading toward a life in protective custody, alive because he'd saved children he'd helped kidnap. "Judge Thompson," a young voice called. Marcus turned to find David Kim, the boy from the warehouse, holding his journal. "I want you to have this. Evidence for the trials. But also, so you remember us." Marcus took the journal, feeling its weight, not just paper and ink, but testimony to survival, to resilience, to the human capacity to document truth even in the darkest places. "David, I need you to know something," Marcus said. "You're not just evidence. You're not just a victim. You're a survivor who helped save 39 other children. You're a hero." David's parents approached, tears streaming. "Judge Thompson, we don't have words." "You don't need any," Marcus replied. "Take your son home. Help him heal. That's thanks enough." As the families departed, Marcus found himself alone with Sharon in the courthouse lobby. The crowds outside were celebrating, but inside the weight of what they'd uncovered pressed down. "It's not over," Marcus said. "The foreign connections, the other cities involved, the systemic corruption." "No," Sharon agreed. "But tonight, 40 children are sleeping in their own beds instead of cages. Tonight, hundreds of corrupt officials are behind bars. Tonight, the world saw that justice isn't just a word." Rivera approached with Director Crawford on a secure phone. "Judge Thompson, we've arrested over 400 individuals nationwide based on the evidence you uncovered. The foreign intelligence connections are being pursued by CIA and NSA. You've triggered the largest anti-corruption operation in American history." "And Johnson?" Marcus asked. "In solitary protective custody. He's already providing more names, more evidence. He seems different. Broken, maybe. Or finally understanding what he became." Marcus thought about Johnson's journey from racist cop to child trafficker to reluctant savior. There was no redemption arc that could erase his crimes, but perhaps there was something in that final choice, that decision to save the children, rather than let them die. "Your Honor," Agent Chen interrupted. "There's someone here to see you." Officer Davis entered, the one who'd texted Marcus about Johnson's plans. He looked exhausted but determined. "Judge Thompson, I've been Johnson's partner for 3 years. I've seen everything, documented what I could, but was too scared to act. Not anymore." He handed over a drive. Every illegal stop, every planted evidence case, every brutality complaint Johnson made disappear. 3 years of evidence. "Why now?" Marcus asked. "Because I watched you stand up to him at that rest stop. A federal judge, and you just stood there and took it, knowing it was being recorded, knowing justice would come. If you could do that, I could do this." Davis's evidence would lead to another 100 arrests, thousands of overturned convictions, millions in settlements for victims. But more importantly, it showed that change was possible, that courage was contagious. As night fell on Detroit, Marcus stood on the courthouse steps where just 24 hours ago he'd been shot at for telling the truth. The city sprawled before him, wounded, but healing, corrupt, but cleansing itself. "What now?" Sharon asked, taking his hand. "Now we rebuild," Marcus said. "Not just the police, but trust. Not just the system, but faith in justice." His phone buzzed, a message from Mitchell in the hospital. "Judge Thompson, thank you for keeping your promise. I'm ready to testify. About everything." Another message from Agent Chen. "My brother Tommy wants to cooperate. He says there are officers ready to come forward, ready to change." And another from an unknown number that turned out to be a Detroit patrol officer. "Watched your speech. Joining the reform program. Want to be the cop I thought I'd be when I started." The messages kept coming, officers, citizens, officials, all reaching out, all ready to be part of something better. President Walsh called one final time. "Judge Thompson, I'm signing an executive order creating the Thompson Commission for Police Reform. Will you chair it?" Marcus looked at Sharon, who nodded. "On one condition, Madam President. It's not named after me. Name it after those 40 children. Call it the Children's Justice Commission. Because that's what this is really about, creating a world where children don't disappear, where parents don't lose hope, where justice means protection for the vulnerable, not power for the strong." "Done," the president said. "Judge Thompson, Marcus, you've given us a chance to fix what's broken. Don't stop now." As the call ended, Marcus saw the crowds gathering again outside the courthouse. But this time, they weren't protesting or celebrating. They were organizing neighborhood watches, accountability committees, reform groups. The revolution that had started with a traffic stop was becoming a movement. Johnson would spend life in prison, turning state's evidence from his cell. Mitchell would recover, testify, and eventually become an advocate for police reform. The 40 children would grow up free, their testimonies helping convict hundreds of traffickers worldwide. The corrupt officers, judges, and prosecutors would face justice, their empire of crime dismantled piece by piece. But the real victory was simpler and more profound. Tomorrow, when black drivers were pulled over in Detroit, body cameras would be recording. When citizens filmed police encounters, they would be protected, not threatened. When children went missing, real investigations would follow, not cover-ups. Marcus stood with Sharon as the crowd began to sing again, not "We Shall Overcome" this time, but "Amazing Grace." The voices rose through the Detroit night, carrying across a city that had faced its demons and chosen redemption. "You know they'll come after us," Sharon said quietly. "The corruption network had international reach. There will be retaliation." "Let them come," Marcus replied, thinking of David Kim's journal of the children's faces of Johnson's final choice to save rather than destroy. "We've shown the world that ordinary people can stand against extraordinary evil. That truth, recorded and shared, is stronger than any lie. That justice delayed isn't always justice denied. Sometimes it's justice prepared, justice inevitable." A young black father approached with his daughter, maybe 6 years old. Judge Thompson, I want my daughter to meet you. I want her to know that someone stood up, that someone said enough. Marcus knelt to the child's level. What's your name? Justice, she said shyly. My mama named me Justice. Marcus smiled, the first genuine smile he'd managed in days. That's a powerful name. You know what it means. It means doing what's right even when it's hard. The girl recited clearly, having been taught this. That's exactly what it means, Marcus agreed. And tonight, Justice, your whole city is learning that lesson. As the family walked away, Marcus felt the weight of the past 6 months lifting. The Wire was silent. The investigation complete, the corruption exposed. But the real work of rebuilding, reforming, redemption was just beginning. His phone showed one final message from a number he didn't recognize. When he opened it, he found a photo of the family from the rest stop, the ones who'd filmed Johnson's assault. They were holding a sign, "Thank you, Judge Thompson. You showed us that recording is resistance, that watching is witness, that justice is possible." Marcus showed the photo to Sharon, who was crying now, tears of exhaustion, relief, and hope mixed together. "We did it," she whispered. "No," Marcus corrected, looking at the crowds, at the federal agents, at the city lights reflecting off the river. "We started it. Detroit did it. America is doing it. And it won't stop until every citizen can drive without fear, every child is safe, every officer remembers their oath." The courthouse lights dimmed as they prepared to leave, but the city lights burned brighter. Detroit, scarred, struggling, but ultimately unbroken, was writing a new chapter. And Judge Marcus Thompson, who'd started as an undercover investigator and ended as a national symbol of justice, was just another citizen, now walking home with his wife through streets that were a little safer, a little more, just a little more hopeful than they'd been 24 hours before. The revolution hadn't been televised after all. It had been live-streamed, uploaded, shared, and witnessed by millions. And it had won, not through violence or destruction, but through the simple revolutionary act of refusing to look away from the truth. As they reached their damaged but still standing home, Marcus turned for one last look at the city. Somewhere, Johnson sat in a cell, contemplating his choices. Mitchell lay in a hospital bed, preparing his testimony. 40 children slept safely in their families' arms, and tomorrow the work would continue. Justice, the concept, and the little girl had won this round. And that, Marcus thought, as Sharon led him inside, was enough for tonight. Tomorrow they would continue building the world that justice deserved. The Wire was silent. The work was done. The transformation had begun.